Hey spooky people, Jackson here, and I was thrilled to see that I had a comment on one of my last videos asking from Thousandth Moon, hey, are you going to make some more Borca? So, yes I am, and here it is. I had always planned to revisit Borca, but due to the amount of editing I had done on those two videos and the lesser amount of views that I got, I decided I should wait a while and do some shorter recaps and focus more on kind of the takeaways so that you guys can glean something from my D&D adventures other than just kind of the cool stuff that happens. So, thank you so much for the request, and without further ado, let's talk some Morca about some Borca. So, I have had 3 sessions since my last video, and thankfully I've been doing my little recaps, so I am going to run through here, and as I hit on something that I think is a neat little tidbit that you should totally steal from me, I will take a pause. So, Prologue, the Olzanic Auction, Part 2. Reth, Satan, and Camellia meet in the aftermath to discuss their knowledge of the night's bloody events. Gunderslav is sent on a task by Reth to find any Ritters. While all other noble houses were represented, the Ritters were absent. The Ritter house happens to be where our missing 4th player is from. The Nun, this is the one Mistwatcher that survived the attack on the auction, a Minotaur named Gnefa, reveals that she and her Mistwatcher companions were placed under an enchanting spell. She remembers being taken to a tunnel of trees south of Levkarest, hearing a man's voice and seeing red eyes that told her to take the treasures and escape. Zatan determines that this is magic of a high order, specifically a Gia spell. I don't think it's a problem at all, and in fact there are rules in the books, the base books, Player Handbook DMG, for identifying specific spells. I don't think that's metagaming at all. Sometimes I will kind of flavor in character like, oh, this is higher tier magic that this person was able to cast, rather than just saying like, yeah, bro, they cast a level 5 spell, you know? But at the end of the day, it's not bad metagaming to be able to give your players and their characters the information that this is a spell you might know about. This tells you a lot about the enemy or the spellcaster that you might be facing. Gnefa also mentions growing up under the shadow of the Nobreskov estate. She is able to grant Nigel Olzanic gentle repose. So, the noble that was killed as a result from this Mistwatcher faction that was apparently enchanted, she is able to keep him in stasis so that his body doesn't rot or turn undead. That's good. Zatan notes that her sect of the Church of Ezra believes that someone can be brought back to life only with great purpose, and no doubt Gnefa will be searching for that purpose. For now, she is under the watchful care of Darsan Piechota. Darsan was briefly watching out for Ingvild Okratir. The one-armed captain rages against Camellia for her injury, but Camellia gives no ground towards her grievance. Ingvild leaves in a huff, swearing that the scales will be balanced one way or another. This is one of those big decision points for the party. You know, here's this noble, you hurt her in a fight, that was not a pre-scripted event, that's the way the dice landed. Are you going to voluntarily, make it up to her, get her some kind of prosthetic arm right away, or if she's mad about it, are you going to say sucks to suck? And they went with the latter option. So there is now kind of a quest marker or a danger marker added that the Okratirs are not going to be happy with the investigators as they continue. Mammy Olzanic descends to witness Nigel's corpse. She handles the news with dignity, though she directs some ire when she learns it was Zatan Graves who landed the killing blow. She's going to be mad at who killed her son, no matter what, but the fact that it wasn't even one of the nobles trying to act on their best intents, but it was this Scalamancer who, speaks for a noble house but isn't even from them, like, that's what killed my son? Come on. The 3 promise to investigate these events and find who wished this chaos upon Olzanic's house. Zatan manages to hide the fact that they chose Gnefa for Camelia's resurrection rather than reviving Nigel. So we've spared some ire right now. We've spared another conflict, kind of like they have with Ingvild, but they may be risking a greater conflict down the line when word gets out to Mami Akratir, Olzanik. Not the first time that's happened. Way to have two noble houses that both start with the same letter. Anyway, Mami Olzanik is going to eventually find out that these three adventurers resurrected one of Nigel's attackers rather than resurrecting him, and boy will she be mad. Thanks to some information from Simon Nuiken and a story from Camelia's mothers, the group hears about a rumored potion of resurrection made by Lady Mist Praetorius. This is one of Camelia's ancestors, and presumed left behind in Verderon Ven's dragon lair. Simon Nuiken is sent on a task to prepare a research paper on Verderon Ven's rumored hoard. This is good. So remember how I said I may have introduced too many nobles? This is actually the nicer side of that maybe I should give myself some credit back for. Because when you have too many characters, your party will tell you, either directly or from reading the room, which ones they care about. They don't really care about Simon Nuiken. He's a lore nerd, but they do notice that he's useful. So when he starts spouting out some information and how he's trying to find out more about Verderon Ven and this lair and the spoils that should be at the auction, they say, "That's a great idea, Simon. Why don't you go write us a research paper about that?" And he's like, "I would love to. I'll get on that right away." So this is kind of a quest marker that is removed from the party. That's good. I don't want them to have like 10 ongoing quests, right? Outside the estate, Camelia spots one of Hadriana's tiefling attendants blending in with the crowd of whispering merchants. Hadriana herself left quickly after the chaos ensued, and was nowhere on the grounds for the aftermath. We're showing a little possible suspicion of Hadriana, and that's not really something that I did. Whenever I'm writing these recaps, I'll try to make a mental note whenever somebody in the party says something about like, "Oh, she wasn't there. I wonder why her crony is running around." Interesting. Like, I'll try to put that in as a reminder to my players, and if they want, they can add on to this little forum post and say, "Hey guys, what about this thing?" Because I'm not going to touch on everything that they may have remembered from their side of the table. Suddenly, the headless chauffeur gallops forward, bearing a letter from Ivan de Lisnia. It is Reth who approaches Lord Dullahan to read the ruler of Borca's words to the assembly. In this letter, Ivan reveals that the auction was a fake one, meant to draw out any thieves and betrayers. The true auction would be held soon, hosted by House Ritter. So this was a nice reveal for two players anyway. Reth's player happened to be the one that already knew, and he took advantage of that to place himself in higher status amongst the nobles by being the one that spoke for Ivan, who is the official ruler of Borca at this time. The three self-assigned investigators agree to meet the next morning to follow the leads provided by Gnefa. Real quick note that we'll notice as I'm going through this recap, I do like to frame the adventuring party somehow. And this can be by them like naming themselves something cool, but mostly I like to say, are you monster hunters? Are you the hero of Ferelden? What is your purpose here that people are going to recognize you as, rather than just like, oh, hey, you're a bunch of D&D adventurers. So these folks are noble investigators who are now here trying to see who tried to rob this noble auction and who killed Nigel Olzanik, or caused his death, because they were the ones that actually killed him. He was under a spell. It wasn't their fault. Sure. That night, Zatan gathers any information pertaining to House Piechota. He is suspicious of Darsan's overt politeness, combined with the curious poison dagger he was prepared to sacrifice for Camelia's spell. He recalls that the Piechotas were once the honor guard to the ruling Baritzi family before Klaus took over. During that time, the Honor Guard experienced multiple unfortunate deaths that led to the family repurposing the guardhouses along the Ruby Road into inns. These inns make a meager profit, managing to keep the Pietrotas afloat amidst their debts. So, I have a player who is reborn, and their character does not sleep. So they take advantage of that by doing scholarly things from their background and exploring what they can. I think that's great. I don't think that's anything to groan about as a DM. Unfortunately, I've experienced that. You should accept that in any group, somebody's going to have dark vision and somebody's not going to have to sleep for 8 hours. Give it to them. You don't have to dedicate 8 hours of time to it. Of course not. But you can just, take 5 or 10 minutes. Tell everybody else, hey, if you want to take a snap break, if you want to check your phones, now's a good time. But if you want to key into what's going on here, this is good information for you as players too. So, let that happen. Give your players some good information. Ask them, what are you going to do while you're not sleeping? Are you on guard duty, or are you doing something else like this player happened to be doing with Satan? That's good. Reth faces a thing in the shadows, summoned by his own whims. Reth asks about any creatures that can cast powerful enchantments on the weak-minded, and the shadow mentions an old rival of the Nobriskov blood, a bloodsucker residing in the innkeeper's woods. The shadow then answers Reth's curiosities about someone close to him, Kess. This Kess hunts for a hermit in Mount Greece. In exchange, the Shadow Fae tells Reth that Kess will now be aware of Reth's hunt. This was really, really good. So, this shadow creature is the nine-tailed displacer beast that is Reth's Warlock Patron. He is an arch-fae. He's just a gigantic displacer beast, very much inspired, so told to me by the player, by the nine-tailed fox in Naruto. And that's very much how I play it, but with some little fae things. And fae, they can be fickle, but they like their deals. So Kess is kind of Reth's Itachi. This is his brother. This is an aspiring member of the Nine. And for either one of them to complete their ritual and truly become a high Nobriskov, a member truly of the Nine, they will have to kill one or the other. So this was set up by the player. I think this is amazingly cool backstory that actually sets up something for the future of the campaign rather than just being about, let me tell you about this cool thing where I came from. So this is really good. This was a really good Warlock Patron interaction, and I can't take too much credit for it. This was totally served up to me by the player, and I'm just trying to oop that alley. At sunrise, Reth's dragon-wing bow transforms into a green kobold named Jaxi. So this is not a self-insert. I knew that I wanted an unintelligent magic item where it would, at sundown, it is a weapon, and whenever the sun's out, it turns into a creature. It's oh man, it sucks that I'm a bow half of my life. And when I rolled on the kobold or dragonborn name table, Jaxi came up, and I'm well, alright, sure, I'm Jackson, this can be Jaxi, whatever. This kobold doesn't seem to have any special talents, but knows the true lair of Verderon Ven. Unsure of how to use this new knowledge and companion, the three venture on to the graveyard, where Ganefa and her Mistwatcher companions cross the threshold to their eventual doom. So, we've set up some stuff in the future. It's Dungeons and Dragons. I like to, make there something about a dragon in pretty much any game that I play, whether they are right in front of your face or way over there. And for this party, the dragon's way over there, but this is me saying, if you want to visit Verderon Ven, the Great Green Dragon, you now have a person in the form of this bow that you won at an auction who can tell you exactly where the lair is. What are you going to do with that? I don't know. That's up to them. Do they want to slay a dragon or have a good chat? We also know that Reth wants to kill this red-eyed creature that, he thinks that this is the thing that enchanted Gennefa and the Mistwatchers to make them interrupt the auction and lead to the death of Nigel. So that was a whole session. Now I'm talking about, a whole lot happened, even though there wasn't a lot of action. This was very much a setup episode rather than a bombs go off episode. But I don't mind that at all. And a lot of times my players, the people that I play with, the majority seem to think that these are like the more fun sessions that they remember. The big fights are cool and all. And speaking of that, let's talk about next session. All together now, Session 1, The Flower of Little Glenway. Lord Light! We finally got our 4th player in. Lord Light travels south to investigate the absence of his head butler, Mr. Porrico. He finds a curious party and joins them as they venture into the Little Glenway graveyard. You'll notice here, and kind of back with the Pietro does, if you're reading in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, there's very little info about Borca. I know that there's other tomes back in the D&D Legend catalog that you can get really into some lore on Borca, but I just took what was in the book and then I start adding things to it. So we have the town of Levcaress. That's a big deal. Little Glenway is me saying, okay, they would have a little burrow over here. That's where they keep the graveyard for everybody. So I'm going to make up that town. And the Pietrotas are in bad fortune right now. I'm going to figure out where they were before and maybe start to build a story about how they became in bad fortune. So that's something you can do with, any lore book out there or even pop culture. I have a whole series on can you play D&D in Berserk or something. And let's say you want to explore the lands of the Kushan Empire, but there's not really a lot of lore in Berserk about Kushan. They're just kind of the evil empire that's taken over. You have the power to write your own lore that is now real for you and your players. That's totally fine. Moving on. The party meets Mistwatcher Paulette and the gravedigger Sorge. Old Sorge hears that they want to know what was wrong with the graveyard that led Gennefa's band to cleanse this place. Sorge insists nothing is wrong, but he relents and shows them to the Grand Crypt. I had a blast playing off this NPC that I made up pretty quickly. If I can pull up his little sheet here. Here we go. And as the picture would suggest, I kind of wanted this dour gravedigger character, kind of like Yorick from League of Legends. I wrote these paragraphs here as kind of his little backstory, but that's mostly for me. For the players, it doesn't matter. They're only seeing a little glimpse of this guy, and if they want to dig in and they want to ask questions, they can hear his whole thing. But I don't think it's your job as a DM to, when you introduce an NPC, suddenly have them give a monologue about like their whole backstory and their whole reason for existing and being here and how important and shiny they are. Your players are the most important part of your game. The NPCs are just along for the ride to assist them in having a good time. Or, a bad time if you're doing a horror game. Let me go back to this. In the crypt, Sorge sets his trap. The old man has his heart steeled against nobility after what befell his son, and he has somehow turned bitter Praetorius, another Camellia ancestor, into a giant body stealer plant. So, I loved this fight. There's a lot of times when I have a fight that I'm kind of nitpicky about myself, and I'm like, I could have done this better, I could have done this better, and this one I'm like, no, I'm proud to say I'm proud of this one. Bodytaker plant is a really cool stat block out of Van Richten's, and I played it pretty straight, except for one big change that we'll note later on. This thing has 16 natural armor, 92 hit points, challenge of 7, and this was up against a 5th level party, but if you know anything about 5th edition CRs, you know that that's not exactly that much of a challenge. Vulnerabilities, poison. I knew that the party had access to some poison damage, so that's a good thing for you to know. Dungeon Master's going into this. Condition immunities, blinded, charmed, frightened, prone. That's also good, because I know they can do a few tricks. So this thing is going to stump them on using a few of their old tricks. Senses, blind sight, handy, but in the environment that this is in, which I described as, a 30-foot cube chamber of the mausoleum. And, Sorge, he was setting up a trap that, the portcullis is going to drop and it's going to split the party in half, which worked like a charm. And I was able to do all this totally in theater of the mind. There was no physical map. And this is a group that I always use physical maps with. And I could tell it was working when nobody said, can we get a map? But I do think that is easier when you have one big monster or maybe two enemies, because Sorge is also here fighting. When you start getting into, I'm going to fight you guys with 12 goblins, and somebody's asking, okay, I'm going to fire Burning Hands. How many does that hit? That's where I think the map comes in handy. Let's see here. Podling Link, Rejuvenation. We'll get back to that. Multi-attack. The plant makes 3 Vine Lash attacks. The Vine Lash has a reach of 20 feet. So, I have locked 2 members of the party. Actually, it was 3. It was 3, and then the Warlock Misty escaped out, because what are you going to do? Somebody has that spell. Own it, realize it, come to peace with it. But, you have them stuck in this 30-foot room where this thing can slap them. So there's only like a 5-foot window where they're safe from this thing and can potentially fire off their Eldritch Blasts or their bows or whatever they have. And some of you may be like, but the map. All that means is they tell me, okay, I want to back up as far as I can. All right, you're going to get in a corner. I'll get in the corner to get out of this thing's reach. Okay, very good. Done. Entrapping pod, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole lot of text here. We have a lot of monsters like this, kind of the Shambling Mound, the Remorays has a swallow effect. It's a, I'm going to eat ya, and if you're still in me, you're going to start getting dead, and then after you're dead, I'm going to make you into a podling. That is a unique feature of the Bodytaker plant. The podlings are around, and the rejuvenation says, hey, when the Bodytaker plant dies, all of its podlings go away, but this thing will sprout back up. I flipped that around. I said, I want this thing to stay dead. I'm not a huge fan, and most of my players aren't huge fans of, oh, you killed the thing, but it got back up again. And you killed the thing, and it got back up again. Like, you gotta use that very sparingly with something big like a lich. This thing, I want it to stay dead. But I want the podlings to stay alive. And I think this actually ties into the themes of Borca. The nobility and their influence survives and creates horrifying implications even when you might kill or, deeply discredit one of these nobles. So we have that repeated with this Bodytaker plant. You can destroy Bitter Praetorius, a little added effect because this is one of our players' characters' ancestors, but they're still going to be here. Their influence, their agents are still going to be out and about, and you don't know who they are because they've stolen the bodies of people that you may know. So, as the fight goes on, let me go back to my recap. One by one, Lord Light, Lady Camellia, and Zatan are all taken by the plant and placed into metamorphosis pods. Zatan was able to fell the Gravedigger before he was taken. Did that seem sudden? Good, that's what I designed. Sorge, I don't want a fight where there's 2 bosses, at least not that right now. I'll do that other times. But for this fight, I didn't want there to be, here's a big boss over here, and there's a big boss in this room. I wanted, here's the big boss Bodytaker plant. That's the main thing you're dealing with. Here's Sorge. He's the helper. He's set up this place like a trap. He's going to tap spike trap, or oh, what is it? Spike growth, excuse me, on the walls so they can't climb out to where there are little gaps in the ceiling where sunlight can go through and hit the Bodytaker plant, because I was ready for someone to ask about that, and I was ready to provide an escape in that 30-foot cube dungeon room if they want out. But Sorge is a support for the Bodytaker plant. He is modeled off of a Druid, right out from the back of the monster manual. They have a bunch of NPCs there. I took a Druid, I gave him a special shovel, I gave him a few key spells that were unique to him, and I left everything else the same. He has an armor class of 10, he has 32 hit points. I knew that within a couple rounds, maybe if he's lucky, Sorge is going to go down when the 5th level party catches up to him. That's okay. Remember how I said, I wrote this guy a backstory and I had fun playing him, but I knew he would go down in 2 rounds? That's kind of what you got to do, DMs. Like, be ready to kill your darlings. Your NPCs, your villains, everything is there for your players to have a good time. You should have a good time too, but would encourage you, I think you're going to have a better time if you figure out, hey, they're going to beat up my things, they're going to mess with my world, and that's part of the fun. I get to react to them reacting to my world, and that's how the game is made, and that's how the collaborative story is made. Stuff that I added for him was mostly the stone shovel, which I said, hey, let's give it shillelagh, and let's give him an extra die of damage. This is something that I've done with 5th edition monsters a lot, especially in my pro games, is I want every round in combat to count. So less drawn out 3-hour fights, more, 30-minute, 2 or 3 round fights where the villain can dish out a lot of damage, but they can also go down pretty quickly. And in between that, we're talking, we're doing dramatic anime dialogue. Ha! How dare you kill my father? Ha! Swing plus 12 longsword. Cool. That's how most of my fights go, and it makes it really snappy. It makes it so that everybody is paying attention, and every round I'll have either some kind of environmental factor go off, or that's when the villain is like, it's time for me to use my final technique! How dare you! There's always something bringing them back into what's cool about this moment, rather than just 10 rounds of I swing my longsword, I missed. I swing my longsword, I hit. I did 10 damage. Yeah, that's what you want to avoid, and unfortunately that's what I've seen at a lot of tables, including Adventure League, and that's why I don't go to Adventure League, sorry. I gave him legendary actions. This is another thing that I love to do because it keeps your players guessing. It's something that you can give to any monster, and is a recommendation that I got from Matt Colville. Shovel Earth. Sorge uses his stone shovel to mold earth with added effects on a 5-foot square within 30 feet. This is a cantrip that I noticed my players have a lot of fun with, so I wanted to also have some fun with it on my side while souping it up for a fight, simplifying it, and it's a reward to my players because when we get to Sorge's loot pile, the shovel is going to be there and it's going to give them access to the Mold Earth cantrip. So I get to decide as they end their turn, as a player ends their turn, I can undermine. The earth beneath your feet sinks and you become grappled until the end of your next turn, unless you passed a DC 14 dexterity saving throw. That's what all of these are. And DC 14 is pretty easy to hit, especially if you're talking about 5th level characters with a +3 proficiency bonus. So my goal here is not to give them some kind of stumper every turn and get them down. My goal here is, okay, your turn's over, but they're still trying a thing. This is Sorge's house. He is the gravedigger, and you're in his mausoleum. This is his master plan, so he can do something here. And even if he misses every one of these special actions with his shovel, the fact that the threat is there and the stress is there for the characters, that's what counts. Shift, the earth moves around you, shoving you 10 feet in a direction of the caster's choice. Dirty trick, the earth springs up, clouding your eyes and forcing you to become blinded until the end of your next turn. So, a little bit of homebrewing there, not too difficult. He's got his stuff here. I think I had him cast Thunderwave once. I want him to be able to use Entangle, but like I said, they down him in 2 rounds, so that's fine. If you don't get to pull off every trick in their toolkit here, that's totally fine. It's there in your toolkit so that you, as the DM, can say, okay, I know this game, this is what this bad guy is going to do in this moment to mess with the heroes in the way that they know. All right, so they down Sorge, done for. Cool, I love it. Bodytaker plant is still there. He's got these people, or the Bodytaker plant has got these people locked in the entrapping pods, and they are very near death. And I did kind of put them in a dreamlike state. This is another thing that I like to do, that I picked up doing in professional games, because if somebody is paying for the experience, I don't want to say, and you're stunned. Congratulations. Sit there for your turn. No, I want them to be able to do something, and in here they were able to do this kind of mind meld thing, and through doing this mind meld and rolling investigation checks and saves, they were able to kind of like, as they're dying and as they're feeling their bodies, start to succumb to goo and wondering what they're going to be out of this, they're figuring out the other people in here, which is going to be Porco, Mr. Porco, the butler that Lord Light was coming to get, and Gunderslav, the Goliath hunter that Reth sent after Lord Light. They are stuck in here. Zatan was able to fell the Gravedigger before he was taken, and so it fell to Reth to slay the bitter body stealer. In the end, all companions were alive, as well as Gunderslav and Porco. In her last undying breath, Camellia hears from Bitter that Ivana is the one who turned her into this. So this is Ivana Baritsi. This is one of the 2 Dark Lords of Borca. And my players, have player knowledge that these are the 2 Dark Lords of this Ravenloft realm. But even the characters know that, okay, Ivan has the power, he's got the crown, but Ivana, she briefly showed up at the auction, and everyone was scared of her because she's still a big deal, and we know that she does stuff with plants, and somebody had already guessed, could this be the work of Ivana Baritsi? I hear that she has strange experiments in her greenhouse. Yeah, this was one of them. So we're going back and remembering that Ravenloft is about these Dark Lords. The party enjoyed a pile of earnings and deliberated what to do with Sorge's corpse. Real quick note here, Sorge's treasure, I like to make these little sticky notes in Roll20 just to be able to say, hey, here's what I rolled up on the random loot list, and so that y'all can divvy it up. I'll put this out on a different forum post for text RP so that y'all can divvy it out between the sessions, because I don't want to spend 30 minutes in our game time that we have together just saying, all right, and who's gonna get, let's see, we have a pocket watch that runs backwards an hour every night. Who wants that? We already had a gamified auction, which was cool. We don't need to have a big discussion about it. This also helps me, I don't have to roll up random loot at the table, although I know some DMs that do that, and their players get to participate too, and it's kind of a fun thing for them to be like, hey, what kind of crazy loot are we going to roll on this table? So that can be a lot of fun. This is something that works for me. I think if you want to roll up your loot or just assign your loot, you don't have to roll it ahead of time. This is a good way to do it. Have a note on Roll20 so that you can publish it later, even if it's onto your Discord. They get the stone shovel. I would say this guy had a trowel suitable as a tool and a dagger. A potion of bark skin, because he was a druid. A letter from his son, Edamir, the last letter before his son's death. So we have some little minor mystery here. Nobody looked at the letter from Edamir yet, so we'll see if that comes up. A holy symbol of Ezra, a silver pendant depicting a silver shield with a belladonna flower. Sorge adorns his necklace with at least 1 sprig of belladonna each day. For Sorge, Ezra is a vengeful spirit who is helping him pull the souls of the damned into the mist. So we're establishing some lore and some world building with our loot pile. We're tying in the character to it. That's good. 1 gold piece and 8 silver pieces to signify this guy gets paid, but it's not a lot. the pocket watch that I mentioned earlier. In the crypt itself, we had Gunderslav, we had the Ageless Head Butler Porco, that's a callback to the Lords and Ladies game we played in Session 0. A small mirror that shows a much older version of the user. By the way, the small mirror in the pocket watch, that came from the random token table in Van Richten's guide. I really like it. It comes with a lot of nice, minor creepy items. Blessed Ornamental Shield of Ezra, blah, blah, blah. A Clank Guard skin, which can be fashioned into a suit of half-plate. So basically, Warforged skeleton that you can make into armor. A Merchant's Rapier, a Mistwatcher's Flail, a Parliament Guard Scimitar, and a short sword bearing the Safebox sigil of the Tatena House. I don't think that the party completely pieced this together, or at least they didn't say it out loud. They probably can start to figure it out, but this is giving a hint of these are the people that Sorge has led into this crypt trap before y'all that have been turned into podlings, because now those podlings are out and about. Here's your hints. A ruby choker necklace worth 100 GP. If you're playing with material components on spell costs, make sure that you're throwing out a 300 gold diamond or a 100 gold piece of jewelry or something. Be sure that you're getting those, because it really sucks to be like, man, I would love to cast Chromatic Orb sometime, but I don't have a 50 gold ruby. Womp womp. 90 gold pieces to split up, and Eyes of Minute Seeing, which seem to match the appearance of the short sword. This is also something that I do whenever I'm giving out standard magic loot, is I still want to put in some kind of flavor on it that puts it in the world, that makes it unique for the characters. Very good. Enjoyed a pile of earnings. They laid an ambush for Paulette, successfully capturing her. So the nun that led them to Sorge, and Sorge who led them into a trap, they capture her. Through Reth's intense investigation and Light's mind-reading magics, they wore down Paulette until she told the truth. She is a podling, a seed that can regrow a new body stealer. That was another kind of bombshell, is, hey, not only are the podlings still around causing trouble, but any one of them could decide, I'm going to plant myself and become this plant that almost killed 3 of you. Reth proposes to send off Paulette to be tortured for information by his house. I love that we're using these house connections, these backstories that we established in Session 0 to say, actually, we don't have to spend all the time continuing to interrogate this person. I can just have my family do that. Cool. I try to limit those little things for, okay, your house, your faction, whatever. You can only have one of these, passive quests going on at once, because it's just too much work on you as a DM to be like, okay, I'm going to track down this timer 3 steps and this timer 1 step. You'll lose track of something, so just set it to 1, and then the player, I guarantee you, will help you say, shouldn't I have that done yet? Yeah. While Reth and Light clash on the nature of the false auction, the party seems united in duty to find the other 3 podlings. There remains the Red-Eyed Beast and the mystery of Geneth's Gios. This is something that I like to do. I like to say, hey, here's your quests, remember? Especially when this group doesn't meet up every week, you're doing other life stuff. I don't expect them to have an encyclopedic knowledge of exactly what was going on in the campaign a month ago when they sit down at the table tomorrow. Whether mysteries are solved or curses are cleansed, the Ritter auction will be held in 1 month's time. I did put some pressure on Lord Light's player to say, when are you going to hold the real auction? And I left that completely up to him. I said it should happen soon. I'll say it should happen within the next 3 months. And he said, it'll be in a month. And I said, okay, it'll be in 1 month. Now, is that a problem? No, not really. That makes that into a much bigger event in the campaign when it does happen. And a crucial consequence that I wonder if the party considered is I was going to put the bulk of their magic item allowance on that real auction. So they are now going to have to wait a month, mostly from their own decision, to really get some choice loot. So finally, we had a Halloween special where I knew one of my players wasn't going to be there again. That's why all of these are like session 1.5 or session prologue. Is that I count these as sessions, like but they're only really, really real, like true blue, no filler episodes, part of the story when everyone's there at the table. Anyway, Light, Zatan, and Camellia find themselves in a strange plane of dreams surrounded by darkness in a tunnel of tree roots. A voice from a red-eyed glowing mask, so we got the red eyes, tells explains, good sentence, Jackson. A voice from a red-eyed glowing mask tells that he has witnessed their meddling and will provide an opportunity to answer some questions about their choices ahead. The voice also offers each of them a wish to assist them in escaping the dream demiplane before it collapses their sleeping minds. So, 2 things here. One big thing, we've thrown out a lot of NPC names, we've thrown out a lot of little side quests. I wanted to say, okay, let's make it so that we can have a session in character so that you can say, okay, what the hell is going on? So this is something we can do, and they use this well. I also knew I wanted to do something special for Halloween before we went in the other room and watched Pan's Labyrinth. So we played Subterra, which is a nice little cooperative horror game where you put down tiles as you're going, kind of like Betrayal at House on the Hill or Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, but you are trying to eventually get to the exit. It's a lot like the horror movie The Descent, which I mention on my 2-hour breakdown of what horror movies are best to play D&D in. So check that out too. Subterra is a nice game. You have these characters that you can be. You have the different roles in the co-op game, and I basically pushed those to the side and said, you're playing your characters in Subterra, a board game we've all played together. So it's nice and approachable, and it takes some pressure off me. I don't have to draw a dungeon. I highly recommend DMs to give yourself different ways to not have to spend 4 hours drawing a dungeon every time you have a session. It can be really, really fun to do every now and then, and your players will appreciate it, though. Camellia plays along, but seeks straight answers from this voice. Oh, here we go. Sorry. The voice also offers each of them a wish to assist them in escaping the dream demiplane before it collapses their sleeping minds. So they all got a wish. And they got a little excited, but they also remembered, oh, I'm in a dream. This is going to affect me here. This is a nice way for us to have our cake and eat it too. We get to play around with a wish spell, a 9th level spell, but it's limited to this demiplane. It's limited to this mini game that we're playing. Camellia plays along, but seeks straight answers from this voice, and with her wish, she asks to know who the voice is. The voice from the mask is forthcoming. He says that he is Lyvander, a vampire who has lived in Borca since the first Duke Boritsi, but has since become only a hermit, observing the plights of nobles and peasants of the land. There's more voices to draw from than the standard vampire voice. I am Strahd von Zarovich, so I went Southern Gentry. He says he has arranged this dream spell because Reth thinks that he is his prey, but Lyvander claims he did not influence Gennefa and the Mist Watchers, so he is not the one they seek. So, this is me saying, hey, it is not worth it to y'all to follow this red herring. I'm just going to tell you guys that it's a red herring, but also there's a vampire down in the southern woods. You know that would be hard to beat at your level, and I don't mind that being, I don't think it's metagame knowledge for the characters to be like, oh god, a vampire, that sounds like a big deal, I don't know if we can kill that. But hey, at some point, if you want to go slay a vampire, he's there. The trio explores the Green Tunnel, guided along by the voice of Lyvander, and haunted by the occasional image of their own mortal memories. Light is noticeably untouched by the hazards of the dream cave, as his wish was to have everything bad that happened to him here happen to Reth instead. This is kind of brutal. This is the missing player that wasn't here this player had said, oh, anything bad that happens to my character, I want it to happen to him. Now, if I didn't know that these two guys had known each other for years and been playing together, you know, they've known each other longer than I've known either of them, like, I probably would have said, like, okay, let's, you know, pause on that, because that's a big deal. Somebody could get really rightfully pissed off or offended about this. But I'm like, no, I know Roman, he'll actually love this, so I'm going to keep track of everything that happens to your character. He's going to wake up next session with, like, boom, 8 psychic damage. Boom, your butt's wet because light slipped and fell in the cavern. Like, it's going to be so good. Sorry. Light makes quick work of exploring the cavern with a song of creation that forms a flying carpet. Creation bards are from Tasha's Guide to Everything, or Cauldron of Everything. Excuse me, Tasha. Excuse me, Lady Tasha. I love it. It's fun. It's a great fit for this player in particular. So you can just do stuff like this, and it's totally legit. Zatan finds himself exploring alone when he comes across a facsimile of his own crowbill mask hanging on the cavern wall. He approaches slowly and touches it. Feeling an invisible hand touch the mask he is wearing, Zatan exchanges the mask, putting on the dream version instead. Suddenly he finds himself in the carriage with his other companions asleep. In the dream plane, a spirit named Tally now embodies Zatan, confused to find herself in this curious place with unknown persons. So, long story short, Silas, Zatan's player, had a character in the last Ravenloft campaign die. Tally died by her own choice so that the plane would be free from the mists and the Dark Lord there. And so I left an offer before session 0 to Silas to say, if you still want Tally to be around, her spirit would still be trapped by Ravenloft because she wasn't within this place when it was yada, magical metaphysics bullshit. Anyway, you can have Tally embody your new character. And he liked that. He wanted to make a new character, Zatan. But Tally is somewhere back there, part of the reason why Zatan is reborn, and we'll find a way to kind of combine this campaign with the last Ravenloft campaign, I think, in a cool way, and this was the introduction to that, and this was a nice wow moment from everybody at the table. It was really cool. And Silas had no idea I was going to do this. The dream becomes dire as foul memories come to life as horrors set to attack the party. The investigators dare not wait to find out if their wounds here can have deadly consequences in real life. Light and Camellia find the exit, but Camellia turns back to get Tally, barely having time to wonder why this new voice comes from behind the Scolomancer's mask. Running away from a displacer beast, a fire elemental, and a shambling mound, the three escape the dream. What other secrets were uncovered? That is for each investigator to tell. Alright, y'all, so I've only talked for about an hour about this. I hope this was enjoyable, especially thousandth moon. Thank you so much for the request to talk more about Borca. Best of luck on your journey, and to everybody, I hope you have a Nat 20 day. Bye-bye.